first presentation. And your subject, in case people didn't hear it, is pony play as a Western pony with gear and attack. What's required. You'll have 20 minutes to your presentation, and then there'll be a public Q&A. After that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So my experiences in this competition so far have been quite humbling. From falling the other day at the Queen's Cup and having my interview, and when I got my topic, it was admittedly something that I'm not very well versed in. So I did have to do some research, and so I'm very excited to share with you guys everything I learned. So what makes Western equestrians unique is that the fact that it comes from the riding practice of old Spanish conquistadors and was adapted by classic cowboys to meet their working needs. Their riding requirements were unique, and they were often facing long hours on horseback and over unforgiving rough terrain, things like that. And so because of that, the tack and the things they used would fit their needs for work. The primary and most noticeable difference that I noticed when I was doing my research in Tack was comparing the riding practices, say, of English riding to Western riding. And one of the biggest Tack differences is in the saddle. Because of, again, like I was saying, they're made for long hours, and because of the rough terrains, there's an increased danger for them being thrown off their horses and things like that. So the design of the saddle was accommodating the security and comfort of the riders so that they could stay functional and on their horses for longer periods of time than, say, someone who was doing dressage or in a competition who probably didn't need to be on their pony nearly as long as someone who was herding cattle or something like that all day. English saddles, from what I saw, are designed to have the horse's freedom of movement in mind so that they can jump higher and do their dressage more precise and things like that. And one of the most famous signatures of the Western saddle is the fact that it has a deeper seat and a raised cantle so that it has better support for the rider and their back. And it also has a horn in the front to support its lariat, which is what they use to lasso other animals and things like that. And by contrast, the English saddles have almost a flat paddle, no horn, cantle, no horn, and are generally little nothing protruding from it. Other differences include the fact that the tree on a Western saddle is much wider than that on an English saddle. And the weight-bearing portion is often covered in a sheepskin or rawhide, because again, we're looking for comfort in Western. And the girth from the English saddle, or knots for fastening, is called, in Western, it's called a cinch instead, and what that is a, and sulfur is a cinch, and it's often secured with a flat strap of leather or nylon called a latigo that either buckles or knots for fastening. The stirrups for a Western saddle often have wider treads and are designed along with the cowboy's boots along with the rider's boots to reduce the likelihood of a rider's foot getting caught in it. So if there's a reason that a rider using a Western saddle has to get off their horse quicker, or something they're falling off, or if they're thrown off, the stirrups are made to be wider so that they won't get caught and that the horse won't fall on them or something like that. There's also lots of different details and practical differences between Western saddles and others, but one of my favorite ones that I was seeing during my research was the detail in the leatherwork of a Western saddle. If you're not so much into pony play, but say you have a leather fetish, you can definitely appreciate that of a Western saddle. because Western riders have a knack for really expressing themselves through their tack and through their pony, whereas English saddles are usually a bit more uniform. And there's all kinds of intricate leather carvings and different elements of design that you can show off that show off like a rider's taste and their individualism and all of that sort of things. And also they put a lot of work into their saddles because high quality and well-maintained Western saddles are designed to survive for a rider's entire lifetime, and often even longer. So that's why a lot of saddles and tack is then turned into, you hand them down, and it's a tradition and things like that. So there's been a lot of importance placed on the aesthetics of a saddle, and as some of them get passed down as heirlooms and things of that nature. Western headgear also comes from with fewer unique qualities than Western saddle, but some of them are still worth pointing out. The biggest difference in the Western bridle versus the English one is the bit that is used. Western riding practices prefer to train horses to respond with very little contact from the reins, because when roping, a cowboy may need control of the horse with one hand while negotiating the larynx with the other. So they may have to be controlling the horse while at the same time lassoing the cow or things like that. So seasoned horses in Western riding often make use of a curved bit with a single pair of reins. The Western curved bit has longer and looser shanks than the curve of the English double bridle or Powhatan bit. The two primary styles of reins in Western riding are the long split reins of the Texas tradition, which are completely separated, and then there are also the closed-end romal reins of the California tradition, which have a long single attachment at the end useful for a cord, which is like and the Western bridle also typically lacks the nose strap that's common in English bridle. Finally, Western riders have bridle alternatives to the bridle that are useful either for young, unbroken horses that are beginning their training, or more experienced horses that may have injured or worn out their mouths due to age, overuse, or even misuse. The signature bitless bridle of the West is the Boswell Hackman. The structure on the nose, but no bit. Also, the differences I was looking up in Western, in my research I saw was rider attire. So Western riders dress completely differently than riders in other equestrian traditions. They simply wear long-sleeve work shirts, denim jeans, cowboy boots, and wide-brimmed cowboy hat. Right. Most often, riders will also wear chaps to encourage the rider to stick to the saddle and also to protect the legs while riding through brush. During competitions or show events, though, and not just working on your ranch, often the clothing will be extra colorful with bright reds, yellows, etc., sequins, whatever you want. I've seen tack that matches, I've watched videos of Western competitions where the tack matches the horses and what the rider is wearing, so that's always cool. And so during shows, one of the signature differences between Western riding culture and English riding culture is in the flashiness of Western riders. The flashiness that Western riders sometimes use. English riders shy away from ornaments and fancy adornments, while the Western riders, on the other hand, design their bridles, saddles, and bits to be adorned with lots of silver and ornaments and other attention-drawing facets. And especially during show, even the rider may replace the work shirt with a fancy jacket and little tassels going, something like that, and match their hats with their chaps, so that all the elements of Western riding come from the working needs of a cowboy, really just their need to look good while riding. There's lots of different Western competitive events, And some of them that are signature to Western riding include we have the Western Pleasure, which is showing off gentler riding techniques like walks, slow trots or jogs, and light canters and stuff like that. With very limited, practically invisible reining and contact in order to give the impression that the ride is pleasurable or as easy as jumping into a comfortable bed, like you guys are, do this together, and that you and your pony are completely connected. There is also reining, is another event. Some call it is supposed to be the equivalent to dressage in the West, and is one of the few Western riding events that is FEI recognized, which stands for Federation Equestrian International, and is the International Federation for Equestrian Sports. And it involves negotiating patterns that consist of circles, at a lope and a gallop with flying lead changes, rapid spins, rollbacks, and sliding stops. There's also an event called cutting, which is, this event shows off the Western habit of training horses so that the rider taps into its natural instincts to follow cow movements. This independent behavior, which I call cow sense, allows the rider to lay out the reins and let the horse do its own thing. In cutting, the rider will steer the horses in an effort to separate a cow from its herd, and once the cow is separated, the rider gives up control to the horse, who will use its cow sense to instinctively prevent the cow from returning. And beyond the above the events, there's also Western riding, team penning, and several others. So drawing on the above characteristics and qualities of Western riding, a human pony trainer might role play as a Western pony and trainer, or in Western style competition by adapting certain qualities from Western riding, such as the silver adornments of flashy pieces of the Western show horse, or the cowboy style outfit of the Western trainer. But beyond just outward appearance, a human pony may be a bit more independent. The Western human pony might be used to herd human cows, so if you got some, if you have a big herding club, you can get all of them together and do your own rodeo or cow herding. And so that the pony can't, so you might herd human cows, and so the pony can't get used or lost too easily just because the trainer isn't too deeply involved. In that context, the outcome of reining and moving depends on the pony's instincts and less on the trainer's instructions. Beyond that, it's up to the creativity of the individual, really. After all, it is role play, and there isn't a single rule on Western pony role play that fits every pony and trainer. So instead of role-playing or fantasizing to suit some defined rubric, an individual pony or trainer should play in whatever way helps them feel right about what they're doing, even if they are trying to be Western. So they can adapt the Western based on more so how they decorate themselves in their pony and their tack and in the kind of events that they do. So the different games you may set up for your ponies, such as barrel racing or cow herding, if we were talking before. So so far, and I hope to learn more and experience more Western thing myself so that I can tell you guys about more next year.
Yay!
Thank you, contestant number 2.
You're welcome, Bobby.
Wide room pack. Okay, now it's time for question and answer. General public and the judges have 10 minutes to ask you questions on various subjects. Beyond your presentation, it can just be general questions. Your turn. Any questions, please?
So, tell me a little bit about when I see, I'm a novice to pony play, so when I see you trotting, galloping, running as a pony, tell me what that feels like. What kind of headspace, what kind of physical space do you get into?
When I go into my pony headspace and I'm working on my different gaits, the way I feel in that headspace is that I want to please my trainer and I want to do well. I'm trying to listen to my trainer and listen to what it is that they're communicating to me through the reins and through their instructions. And so when I'm being a pony with a trainer, it's all about me being in a space where I can do my best and do well and perform well. Whereas if I'm just ponying alone or with other ponies without a trainer, it makes me feel very free and it's a lot of fun. And the galloping and the trotting and stuff, it just makes me feel like I have, nothing but open space in front of me, and that, there's a release there. And it, again, gives me a break from, my everyday responsibilities as a human or even as a top.
I have a question. Without looking at the piece of paper, can you tell me what is the most interesting or engaging thing you've learned about Western play?
I think the most interesting thing that I learned about it is it seems whereas in English there is a little bit more, there's a little bit more concentration on the pony learning and really being attentive to how the trainer is reining them. It seems like with Western that it gives a little bit more of a space for the pony to kind of to kind of demonstrate on their own without so much, not nearly as much instruction as with English, to how they can perform and succeed in their games and things like that.
Question. So you're a burlesque performer.
Yes.
And you've now studied a little bit about the differences between English and Western.
Right.
So say at an event you were asked to give a burlesque performance based on two burlesque performances, one in the middle of the afternoon, one in the evening maybe.
Right.
Okay. How would your costumes differ and you were allowed to use one prop for each performance? What would the differences be?
It's actually funny to say that because the presentation that I will be giving later
Segue.
actually, yeah. No, it isn't. But is actually, I would say, influenced heavier by Western, which is interesting because I had to train in Western. So aesthetically, I have chaps for the act, and I have a cowboy hat for the act, and things like that. Whereas for an act that would be influenced more by English writing, there would be a difference in the coats I would wear and the pants I would wear and high boots as opposed to cowboy boots. So it would be more in the aesthetics of it and how I would dress. And also I think I would try to demonstrate my dressage techniques more so in my English performance, more so than in Western, where I would more so focus on
They herding that cow.
herding that cattle. So getting other little burlesque cows in there so I can herd them all in one second.
What would be the different kinds of footwear that you might choose for different kinds of pony play, respectively for safety? Say, would I wear a pair of stiletto heels out cutting cattle in a cow pen?
Definitely not, because first thing you're going to sink right into the mud, and that's never good. And I would say that you would wear, for pony play, I would like to use boots or hiking shoes, gym shoes, something that has treads on them. As I made a beautiful example of yesterday, probably a boot or shoe that you worked or broken in is probably also better for you, so that you're not so slippery, and so that your shoes aren't so slippery and you're not so at because things like the horse boots or the heelless high heels, things like that, are great for photo shoots and modeling and things. It's not going to be very practical if you're trying to walk around or exercise or things like that.
Okay, our time is actually up.
Thank you so much again.